Well, now on the show, we're going to take a look at another movie that's been made by a Shyamalan, this time made by Ishana Shyamalan, and it is the daughter of M. Night Shyamalan. And this movie is called The Watchers. And this film revolves around a character called Mina, played by Dakota Fanning, who is given the task to go and deliver a parrot to a zoo. But along the way, she finds herself trapped in this enchanted forest where she comes across a group of people, including Ciara, played by Georgina Campbell, Madeline, played by Olwen Ferrer, and Daniel, played by Oliver Finnegan, who are kind of trapped in this forest as well, and every night have to pretty much live their life but perform for these watchers with very little chance of escape. But that doesn't stop Mina from deciding that there might be a way to escape, and that's where the story begins. And Harley, you went along and saw the Watchers with me. What did you think of this film, especially considering that there's so much around this film because the director is the daughter of a very famous director?
Yes, true. So, given that it's been a little while since we actually saw it, and between then and now, just trying to remember everything, I did quite like the tone and mood of it was pretty good. There was a lot of time trying to latch onto Mina's character, and I'm not saying that Dakota Fanning was playing her bad or anything, but there was always something around her. It's like I'm not sure we like her, and then all of a sudden she's in this situation and there was a weird feeling about, I mean, we care that she's in this situation, and you immediately start to get like, oh, this is really creepy, and you put yourself in her place. But I did find there was a long time in the movie about just trying to figure out who she is. Is she a good person? I don't know. There was this kind of air about her that just suggested she kind of didn't care about anything about life. And the most she kind of cared about anything was just having this bird in a cage that she had to deliver.
Yeah.
And then just getting out of where she was. But for some reason, maybe it was that essence that gave her that like survival instinct that allowed us to follow her. Like she's the instigator to trying to get out of the situation, whereas all the other characters have been there, stuck there for a much greater amount of time. And, you're in her place trying to figure out, can we trust these people? They've been there so long. Why haven't they escaped? What's going on? So we're kind of learning the rules through her. I don't know. Did you have any feeling about her like I did?
Yeah, like I found her to be a kind of strange character, like you said, that you're not sure whether you're meant to like or not. And I guess one of my fears going into this film was I've noticed that this kind of thing at the moment where companies like A24 seem to want to make these art house kind of horrors that I don't particularly like because the characters are so pretentious. Like they seem to want to write horror movies at the moment with rich characters in mind. And I'm thinking of movies like The Menu. And I always struggle with those movies because I find I don't care what happens to the people. Like if you put a rich, pretentious person in a movie and say, "Oh, you better get scared they might die," I'll be like, well, "Why would I be scared they die? I don't like them." And I thought that's what they were doing with this movie at the start as well, especially considering I'd seen the trailer and it did look a little art house about, oh, these four people are living in this glass enclosure kind of thing. And I was like, oh no, it's going to go down that way. And especially when they set her up, where I was like, am I not supposed to like her? Am I supposed to like her? But she did begin to warm to me. Funnily enough, after I found out she worked in a pet shop, I kind of like started to warm to her.
Well, I See, I saw her smoking in the pet shop and thought, I don't like you. Like,
Yeah,
why the hell would you do that around the animals? So I really didn't care about her at that point. And it was only the point where she was suddenly lost in the woods in her car, which was weird in and of itself, that my whole focus was, don't you leave that bird behind. Save the bird.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
because you,
yeah,
you just didn't get that sense of, did she care enough about anything else? And yeah, it was a bit weird. And there was a whole sort of that thing where she went out the night before and dressed up as a different person to hook up with someone. Um, it's like she doesn't even know who she really is or something.
yeah, yeah,
And I guess because she had a twin sister as well somewhere in the story, but that's not really latched onto until some other point. But it does create another theme that happens later in the movie, and that revolves around the Watchers themselves, which it's interesting. They're a presence right at the start where we're set up with the situation. We see basically a throwaway character, um, you know, taken down into this hole in the woods. But yeah, and that does get called back into, so they kind of become important post the fact.
yeah,
But yeah, there's a whole lot of time where you just do not see what the threat is. And I do get what you mean about that kind of art house feel, especially when you say that, yeah, they're in this big metal and glass kind of room, and it's like they're just surviving in there. Like I don't understand how they're just living there, and who built it, where did it come from? And thankfully that is something that gets addressed further on. But the way it's discovered, like I don't know how it took anyone that long to discover the truth of where
yeah.
they are. I think it just seemed really weird to me.
Look,
So
I'll
there were some weird things about it, but I guess that's just the story itself. So yeah.
Yeah, like I'll be honest, like I was actually, and I'm not going to do a spoiler here for people that are listening, but I was kind of happy with what the horror ended up being in this film, just because so often recently like I said, I've had to watch a lot of these art house horror films that are coming out, and I'm very much an old school horror person. Like I want a beast, or I want a ghost, or I want an alien, or I want a psycho with a knife as my horror. Like I really haven't enjoyed these ones where it's been like, oh no, this is a psychological horror where these four people have to live with these people watching them, and it's horrific, and it's like, how's it horrific? Like they're go and sleep in the corner all day. Like it just it really grates with me. I think because of growing up with the kind of horror that I like, a lot of and I also like a lot of what I find these days in modern day horror is so tame compared to what I grew up watching, that like I leave the cinema and go, was that even a horror movie? Like it didn't feel like horror. But then you get and I shouldn't just slag off A24, because they've made some great horror over the last few years as well, where I think they've done the right thing. But yeah, it feels like this new breed of horror that's coming through at the moment is just so far removed from what I like in a horror movie, that I was actually really relieved when the horror revealed itself in this film, and I was like, I kind of like this. Like, so yeah, I think old school horror fans will see this almost as a mixed bag. I don't know if you'll like the first half of the film, but I think you'll like the second half of the film.
It does kind of feel like a mix of both of those versions of horror that you just mentioned. Now that you think
Yeah,
about it, is like people being watched, but they're being watched by something threatening. But it's the situation within the box they're stuck in that makes it a bit weirder as well, because the characters have, like all the other characters, have been in the situation for a longer time.
Yeah,
So their characters have become a bit weird. So of course you kind of like you almost don't want to trust them, and it seems weird that no one has a clue beyond the rules they're supposed to live by. But there are so many questions that get raised, and I personally spent half the film just saying, ask the question, how do they know the rules? Just pick things apart. Just like I would be asking this, and if they're asking this, it shouldn't be off screen. It should be on screen. So, at some point something's got to happen. Yeah, at some point it's a little bit frustrating, and I think that's kind of in the way it's written and how it plays out. Um, the performances otherwise are pretty good. It's just detangling the characters and who they what their backstory is, and yeah, it's a bit weird. It's a difficult situation. I think the weakest part for me was just taking so long to actually kind of give a damn about Dakota Fanning's character of Mina.
yeah. For me, it was what you said before. The only real issue I had was like, well, how come no one else has discovered this before? And I guess in a way that kind of is explained. Like, again, trying not to go into spoiler territory, but yeah, I don't know. Like what I was saying before, I find that a lot of modern day horror films trip themselves up, and it's why I haven't liked films like Hereditary. But then it's why I've loved films like Midsummer, where the explanation of what you think is going to trip it up is there and explains it really well. And I think that might be the case here, where I mean, you've also got to think too, what were the other people like that were in there, because people's personality can determine that as well. If it's someone that just goes, "Oh yeah, okay, I'm in this situation," and doesn't ask questions, then yeah, they're not going to discover what's happening. But if you're someone like Mina, who's like, "Well, hang on, I'm here. I don't want to be here. I want to know answers to these questions. I'm going to break the rules and go out and find these answers." Then yeah, you'll reveal the truth a little bit quicker. So I guess that comes down to as well with the characters. And I think that's why for me, Midsummer works so well, because you do have characters in that that's like, well, hang on, no, I'm not just going to go along with what these guys want. So yeah, I think that can work as well. And I think that's what does work in the Watchers, is that you do have a character who's like, no, I'm not going to stick to these rules that you're telling me. I'm going to break them and try and work things out for myself.
Yeah, there were just logic kind of gaps in there that take you out of it a bit. Even the fact of, if they get out of there, I'm not going to say who does, who doesn't, if anyone does, but okay, you can pretty much assume that someone gets out. Um,
This is really
are,
bad.
are there any
I'm
are there
thinking
any
back to those.
questions about are there any questions about who, where have they been? It just kind of it picks and chooses what it wants to talk about.
Yeah. This is really bad. I'm thinking back to like school, in high school, when there was kids that would be like, when the teacher would be like, "No, I don't want anybody to go into that room. Okay, I'm going out of the room, but no one's allowed in there." Where we'd have these kids that would
Yeah.
be like, "Oh, okay, okay," and then I'd be one of those kids. It's like, why? Why can't we go in that room? I'm gonna have a look. Like, yeah, I don't
Yeah.
know. Maybe
Don't press
that's
the big red button. Why
yeah,
not?
yeah, exactly.
Just cause. Yeah. Uh,
So, so I guess to wrap up, what are you going to give this one out of five, and why?
hmm. It's difficult because I think I actually enjoyed it, but there are those things that really annoyed me, sort of, and it took a big chunk of the film for me to get over them and see things start happening. So I guess for me, I'm gonna have to give it about a 3.
Yeah, I'm going to give it 3.5 out of five. There was probably something that I didn't like about this movie that I should have mentioned before. I thought this movie had the perfect ending, and then there was a bit added onto it. Um, I felt as an audience member I didn't need that bit that was added onto it. There's a perfect ending for this film, and I think it got ruined a little bit because of that bit that gets added onto the end of this film. So yeah, I'm gonna give it a 3.5 out of 5. Harley gave it a 3 out of 5. The Watchers is now coming to multiple streaming platforms in Australia. So my recommendation would be to get online and Google which streaming platforms it's on, and sit down and give it a watch, especially if you're an M. Night Shyamalan fan. Tell us what you think of Ishana Shyamalan directing a movie like this. But 3 out of 5 from Harley, 3.5 from me, and we'll be back in just a moment.